We are in week 3 of the Everyday Advent series, and if you are lighting candles in this season of Advent heading into Christmas, then this week you would be lighting the one that is known as the Shepherd's Candle. And this one is all about joy. When the angel of the Lord appeared to the shepherds, we read in Luke 2 that the angel said, "Don't be afraid. I bring you good news that will bring great joy to all people. The Savior, yes, the Messiah, the Lord, has been born today in Bethlehem, the city of David." This angel proclaimed that there was going to be great joy for all people. That meant that the Savior, the Messiah, was not just for the Israelite nation, but that through him, every nation, every person of the world would have the opportunity of salvation. That is good news, and that is a reason to have great joy. We get to experience that through all of this time for all of mankind ever since Jesus was born. We can experience salvation because he came. That's an awesome thought. We have a Savior. And this is the place that we live from and live out of in order to experience joy in our everyday life. Joy is not the feeling of happiness, and I think we get this mixed up a lot, especially in our Western culture. We tend to think that we just want to be happy, that God would want us to be happy. But joy is something that comes from much deeper within. Happiness can change depending on our circumstances. But joy is something that we have no matter what's going on around us, no matter what our circumstances are. Day in and day out, we can experience joy that is rooted and grounded in the presence of God. We actually have to cultivate room for his presence. Psalm 16:11 says this, "In his presence is the fullness of joy." And so every day we have to make room in our life to cultivate a space where we can enjoy the presence of the Lord, because it's out of that place of intimacy with him, of walking close together with him, of knowing his heart and understanding who he is and who he has called us to be, that is our source of joy. The actual word for joy, the meaning of it is rooted in the source. And part of it is that it's grace recognized. That's what the concordance or Bible dictionary that I looked up said. Grace recognized. This is linked to our identity because it's understanding the grace of God and recognizing it at work every day in our lives. That's where joy comes from. It comes from knowing that I am his, that I am a child of God, that I have the assurance of salvation, and that never leaves me despite what it is that I have to walk through in this life. Joy is something that comes from deep within, and it settles deep in our hearts. And I wonder sometimes, do you know what God's heart is for you? Do you know what he believes about you? Do you know that he believes in you? That he believes you can do what he calls you to do? I think God believes in us more than we believe in ourselves sometimes. He's for you, not against you. He has great hope and great plans for you, but you got to get on board and believe it too. And I just feel so deeply that when we get in his presence, he teaches us more about who he is. He teaches us about his love and his grace and his faithfulness. And he teaches us who we are so that we can receive it and walk with it. This source of joy is our deeply rooted assurance that we are children of God, that we can live out of this place of being in his presence and then walking out of it into the world, that we're so deeply rooted in this. I can't say that enough, that there's something so deep within us that is the wellspring of joy. My identity and the core of who I am is that Jesus saved me, that his grace is recognized, not just on that day, but every day in my life. This year, I started the practice probably about 8 months ago of getting up every morning an hour before anyone else in the house gets up and spending time in God's presence so that I can actually live out of that every day. I get filled in that hour alone in the morning. Sometimes I just put on worship music and I just sing because that's what I need. Sometimes I pray. Sometimes it's a mixture of both. But my day begins literally with coffee and Jesus. Like, there's no other way that I can do what he's calling me to do and walk in his plans and purposes for my life and have grace and humility and love when I walk in the room with other people, and to be able to do all the things he's calling me to do as a pastor and a leader if I don't spend that time in his presence. That's where my joy comes from. And I actually want to challenge you, if that's not something you do, and maybe you're not a morning person, I wasn't either. Like I said, it's just something I started this year. But to every day find time, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you can find, to be in the presence of God and to be able to live out of that place. That's what it means to live in joy. That's what it means to live out the everyday Advent.